I love nosing in the garden at this time of year, either my own or other people's. It's striking how much abundance of life there is and how much change appears overnight. New growth, wonderful weeds, as well as prize blooms. And even just a little bit of sunshine triggers the buzz of insects and the flutter of butterflies. And even the tiniest patch of soil is teeming with life just below the surface. Of course, this growth is dependent on plentiful moisture, something we haven't lacked recently. Jesus used the illustration of a living plant, a vine, very effectively when teaching his disciples. Let's hear these extracts from the Gospel of John, chapter 15. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to bear. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And so whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love one another. So it is evident that Jesus expected his disciples to be fruitful. And time again, he tells them that they must remain in or abide in him. The Message version puts it like this: make your home in me just as I do in you. And it's not just an individual thing. We really need each other to keep on loving each other and encouraging one another if we're to keep our faith alive and alert. In a recent service, we considered how caring for creation is all part of loving our neighbour as ourselves. I'd now like to ask Jackie to share her concern that our lack of care for creation is having the greatest impact on the poorest of the poor. Hi, Jackie. I know that climate change and the effect that it's having on the poorest of the poor is something that is really concerning you at the moment. Can you tell us, is this something that's triggered it in the news, or is it based on your personal experience, or what?
Well, in Proverbs chapter 31, verses 8 to 9, it says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. For the rights of all who are destitute, speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. But in neglecting the environment, we're doing exactly the opposite.
Mm. In what ways specifically?
Well, for example, it was in the news a couple of weeks ago that Turkey, which is a relatively poor country, was banning the import of plastic waste from Britain. Did you even know that we exported it?
No.
It turns out that they have been either burning it or burying it, not recycling it, and now they have more than they can cope with. So they don't want any more. Well, that's just wrong. Most of us were brought up with the idea that if you make a mess, you have to tidy it up.
Yes, I certainly was.
But as a nation, we are making the mess and then paying poorer countries to take it off our hands, even though they hardly have the facilities to cope with their own waste. And at an individual level, it means trying to reduce the amount of waste that we produce and then asking questions about what happens to what we do produce.
Okay, well, is this the only way that the poor are suffering?
Well, I think that at the COP26 climate conference, a lot of smaller, low-lying and island nations, who are mostly in the poorer parts of the world, will be pressing for big changes. Because if you live in the Maldives, for example, climate changes mean sea levels rise, and in just a few years, you may not even have a country anymore. God calls us to speak up for the poor and the weak and the vulnerable and defend their rights. There's a video called Turning the Tide on Climate Change. It was produced last year as a call for action in the lead up to COP26 this November. Let's watch that now.
Thank you.